Hello all, my name is Priyanka. I'm doing PhD from University of Bristol. Today I'm going to present my research. It's called Unveiling the Hunter-Gatherers, Exploring Threat Hunting Practices and Challenges in Cyber Defense. This is the research paper which I have recently published at the Usenet Security. This work I have done with the support of my supervisors Marvin, Eleonora, and Awais. So, quick introduction. What is threat hunting? So, basically, threat hunting is an approach where cyber analysts aim to identify potential cyber threats which may have invaded your organizational security systems. They can be done in the two ways, proactive approach and the reactive way. So, why we did this study? What is the motivation behind it? There is a growing need to understand security workers. There has been work done into the bug bounty hunters, CISOs, security analysts, and pen testers. But we want to focus on the threat hunters because there is a limited understanding of the threat hunters and their practices. Till the date, there has been no work focused on specifically on the threat hunters, what they feel, what are the challenges they face. So we want to answer two research questions, basically two broad research questions. Who performs threat hunting? And how do they do it? The second, what are the challenges they face and how do they overcome them? So in order to do so, we conducted a semi-structured qualitative study where we wanted to hire threat hunters who have minimum of 2.5 years of experience in this field. And then we used the snowball and then we recruited threat hunters through different channels. At the end, we have total of 22 participants from across the globe. Majority were there from the US and the UK. In our sample, we have the threat hunters working in the MSSP, in-house plus MSSP and the in-house. So we have overall really balanced sample. So, let's go to the findings. Who performs threat hunting? We want to understand who perform exactly. So we found that these are the people who have the diverse qualification. They are part of the dedicated team or they are not. They have the main job as different, they have different responsibilities and job and then they do threat hunting as a part-time. And these threat hunting teams are formed randomly. For example, one of our participants mentioned that I have a team of 8 people. Most of them actually started on our forensic team, and I have kind of approached people from the forensic team, pen test team to form threat hunting team. I had to cross-train the forensic guys and then pen testers. So the takeaway from that is the threat hunting is basically carried out by analysts with diverse qualification who may be part of dedicated team or have other organizational responsibilities. Since there are no specific qualification requirement for the threat hunting, organization can spend their time and resources to train them. Now, once we know who performs threat hunting, we want to understand how do they do it. So we found that basically they do it in 3 ways: use case-based hunting, intel-based hunting, random-based hunting. In the use case, they basically use the predefined scenarios. They build the hypothetical cases to find the suspicious activities within the network. In the intel-based hunting, they leverage the threat intelligence, such as the indicator of compromise, indicator of attacks, which is also known as IOCs or IOAs, to guide threat hunting process. And in the random hunting, I don't think this specific technique is mentioned anywhere. It's so random because our participant mentioned that it's so random. They do it without any prior knowledge and without any specific IOCs or without any predefined plan. So this is really interesting to know that they are doing that way as well. The one thing to note here is that also there are 3 different methods. They are not limit themselves to only one. Sometimes they also use the mixed approach. So in the second part of the threat hunting, as I mentioned, there are 3 methods. However, there is also something that they follow in a systematic way, which I'll explain in the next slides. So first, our threat hunters mentioned that they start with the planning, which they call the pre-hunt plan. In that, they gather all the information for what they want to look for, what kind of the tactics they will need, what kind of resources they will allocate for that specific hunt. as our participants mentioned, that we try to plan all the stuff out in the beginning. We plan getting together in the beginning with everyone involved in it, and then just let the system run, and then if something comes up, we deal with as a team. So the takeaway is like most threat hunting activities start with a dedicated plan, where threat hunters define the scope of the investigation, assess the threat intelligence, generate hypotheses, use cases, and identify relevant data sources for their basically chosen approach. If they have the use case based hunting, they plan according to the use case based hunting. If they have the intel based hunting, then they have the plan according to the intel based hunting. So once they have the pre-hunt plan, they move towards the data collection and preparation. So we found that they use the various tools to collect the data. The main thing is like the hunting approach determines what kind of the data they will need. And also the data, as much as data they collect, the quality of the hunt would be better. The takeaway is like the threat hunters tailor their data collection to align with the threat hunting goals and collect as much as there are possible to maximize their threat hunting effectiveness. Next is like hunting and validation. Once they have all the data and all the prepared everything, they move towards the hunting. Hunting and validation is two different processes. However, they are also connected together. For example, in the case of random hunts, we found that also they are unplanned and are often initiated by hunch. Threat hunters observe something that is malicious. So they have to go back to the data collection. They have to refine that query until and unless, and then they find actually what they are looking for. So identification and validation are interconnected processes. Threat hunters employs various tools and manually search and validate IOCs. And also validation is a team process, because if you need to validate, you also need to discuss with the team that it's actually the proper hunt, it's not the false positive. Once they have the validated, they have to take the remediation action and start reporting. These are also two interconnected processes. They take the remediation actions based on the severity. If the severity is high, they take the immediate action. Lesson learned are also critical part as mentioned by our threat hunters. They mentioned that reporting will really enhance them in the future hunt. If they report it properly, it will really help them to identify new threats, and then it will really help in the future threat hunting process. The takeaway is like validation, remediation, and reporting are also interconnected and vital stages of threat hunting. They are crucial for ensuring that threats are effectively addressed, lessons learned are incorporated into future hunting processes, and necessary actions are taken to enhance organization security. So now once we know how do they do it, we also found what are the challenges. We asked them what are the challenges you face while doing the threat hunting. They have mentioned lots of challenges, but we have categorized them into three broad categories. Method-related challenges, data-related challenges, organization and people-related challenges. I will not explain what the false positive and everything is, but I will explain what our threat hunters feels about this challenge, how they hinders the process in the threat hunting. Method-related challenges, so false positive. So our participants P9 mentioned that yes, there are many false positives, especially on the PowerShell side. We built a use case to block PowerShell in the network, and it sometimes flagged it. When we ask about, we receive responses like, no, we are not using PowerShell. But it turned out there is one admin who is very proficient with PowerShell and who used it. We thought, oh, what's happening here? And analyst says, oh, no one is using PowerShell, but there is a senior guy who was using it. There are lots of cases like false positive. If someone is using something in the organization and they are not informing the security team, and that flags up, and that are really, really making alerts, and that makes a really challenge for the threat hunters. Building use cases are complex TTPs. Our participant 8 mentioned the biggest challenge we have is going through all the tactics and identifying what we can look for in particular client's environment. Because the My3 attack metric is very broad. There is so much data there that you have to go through and understand what data sources are needed for particular techniques to focus on. Evolving techniques and techniques. Of course, it's like cyber attacks are emerging, so does the adversaries. So participant 5 mentioned the biggest challenge is changing TTPs. When you have groups that change the way they operate, you can't go in knowing that Conti does this or APT28 does this. You can't really be used that much because they could change tactics. Groups change the tactics all the time. So that's probably the biggest thing involving techniques. If some of you are working in this space, you can relate with some of the challenges if you are facing. Yeah. System and tools falling. Our participant do mention, because we do correlate, some searches takes more time and CPUs than others. So we need optimize so that one research does not crash all the system. We try to do that, but the issue is the lab, we only have few rules and only running when we want them to run. Because when you have the brick production, you have thousands of rules running all parallel together. So when we create a rule, we have to make sure that it will fit into the bigger production without crashing everything. So yeah, it's a really big problem. So takeaway from the method challenges like building relevant use cases or hypothesis is a big challenge because attacks constantly evolve. Delivering false positive, whether positives or negative, pose many challenges, including times and team efforts. While cybersecurity tools plays a really crucial role in threat hunting, they sometimes fall short. Next is the data-related challenges. Complex data. It's very challenging to keep up with the technology and available options. Logs often change their format, the way they appear, the way they parse. So what that means is that the detection that we run is based on what the logs look like a year back. They are not looking what it is today. Incomplete and low quality data. Our participant 18 mentioned another thing that becomes apparent is when you expect the data to be there, but it's not. You should have 30 days of logs, but when you check there are only 7. What happened there? I think there are the basic of obtaining the data, and some people would call this visibility. I need this visibility into this thing in order to do that. Log is a really big challenge. Sometimes you have less logs and sometimes you have a lots of log, which is like data overload. To make sense of the data, we have a lot of it, and to get something interesting from it is a big challenge. You end up with lots of results that are useless in the dataset. It's hard to filter out new threats. It's very challenging and it takes time to adjust the query to get the right data. Once you have the data also, there is limited data storage. Of course, it's a really big problem because although you have data, you might not store that data. Like participant mentioned that the problem I have seen that people don't think about what happened when you need the forensic. What happens when there is compromise? You need data for 30 days, 60 days, or even 180 days. Takeaway is like threat hunting mostly relies extensively on the availability, usability, and the quality of the data. However, this is crucial aspect present in it's a really significant challenge. And this difficulty arises from obtaining the required data for the investigation due to poor logging, poor visibility, and lack of the data storage in the organization practices. The complexity and overwhelming of the nature of the data making it challenges for the analyst to whatever the knowledge they have for the tools. Organization and people related challenges. Skill set, communication, budget constraint. Skill set. Our threat hunter 8 mentioned our main challenge is that not a lot of IT people we encounter are well versed in security and incident management. So we have to give them step-by-step instruction on what to do, and it takes time. And even if you do so, sometimes they don't understand. Or what is happening? Why do we need this? We have to let them understand, otherwise they are going to make mistakes. In terms of the communication, They are really keen. There are different types of the communication challenges. Either they have the lack of the communication within the team, either they have the lack of the communication within the tools. For example, our participant 3 mentioned there is no point of having threat intelligence if you can't communicate it to someone in a proper way. So someone who is very skilled at reporting, who can create a loss of information. Communication is quite also useful to the people that are working on the broad things like that we don't understand cyber, and presenting the threats to them in a way that they can understand and they can use it in a way. So if you can't communicate well, it's not going to work well with the threat hunting team. Budget constraint and lack of resources. Cost is one of the biggest issue. I think every organization have this issue, because the technology that compromises needs are expensive. This participant say that I have been working in threat hunting for almost 20 years, one from another, as well as exploited all kind of stuff. We have to do the best job possible with lack of information and lack of technology at the client. So threat hunting effectiveness is integrally tied to the skills and experience of the threat hunters. However, finding and retaining quality staff in the field is a really big challenge. The threat hunting is also underfunded in most of the organizations. So once we asked them, they also mentioned the best practice strategies to overcome this challenges. So they have mentioned different strategies, but we have categorized them into the 3 main strategies: reanalyze, retuning, and collaborating. So in order to address the false alert, our participants mentioned that they have to conduct thorough analysis. They have to go to the historical data, identify patterns and common characteristics of the previous attack in order to reduce the false positive or the false negatives. They also explain some constant fine-tuning on their approach, refine the detection rules, use case, and the algorithm in order to hunt for the best. They also make importance on the collaboration and sharing and learning. Strategy 2 is automative repetitive task. They mentioned that it will really help them to scale the search and improve its effectiveness. Automation also helps them to ensure the consistency, accuracy around the data collection and analysis. It also helps them to reduce the burden, because if they automate certain tasks, they say that they will have some times to define more strategy and then they perform the better threat hunting practices. Refine data collection strategies. They mentioned that identifying, collecting only information that is needed, because if you have so much data, you can't just find everything in that. So they mentioned that you can collect only what is needed, and also use the efficient method for collecting and storing data. They also encourage the best practices around the data collection. While others also mentioned that having centralized data in the place really helps them, because if they don't have to go to the firewall to collect the data, they don't have to go to the EDR, they have to have the centralized data collection platform. Strategy 4, asking for better budget allocation. Because organizations do not think that threat hunting requires lots of budget, but they say that acquiring right tool, organization can conduct trainings. Participant mentioned that having adequate budget collection is also crucial. That will really help them, and if organization can spend in resources and tool, that will really help them to detect and mitigate threats. Keeping up with the current threats, staying informed, because cyber attacks are emerging. You have to stay informed about all the latest threats and regarding that. They also mentioned the continuous learning approach to keep them updated on the current threats and how to identify threats to respond to them. They could be achieved through trainings and research effort. They also mentioned that documenting and reporting new threats is part of their new learning and keeping up with the new threats. Being flexible, open-minded. Our participant mentioned that one way of making threat hunting easier is not following rigid and repetitive process. As threats are constantly evolved, one needs to be creative and find new ways of hunting for threats. Being strict in approach or not adapting the process could lead to missing new threats or emerging threats. Yeah, thank you so much. This is our paper link, so please read our paper. We have so much details in our paper. So, yeah, please connect with me in X and LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we've still got about 5 minutes for Q&A.
On one of your first slides, you had snowball up there.
Yeah.
What's snowball?
So, snowball, for example, in the research, you need to, in the recruitment, for example, I know you and you know someone, but I don't know them. So I know them via you. So that's called the snowball techniques. So I talk to you and there's, okay, this is the study I'm doing and I need people who are in the threat hunting. And if you know someone, you pass my study details to that person and then I connect with that person via you. So that's called the snowball. Just. Yeah.
Really good research. Did you get any timings on the different types of threat hunting?
Timings in regarding what?
And how long people are taking to do the different use case-based random bursts?
Oh, that's a really good question. Really, the partisan mention is based on what, if they are doing the MSSP, so if they have the contract, so the threat hunting is not as defined. If you have the incident response, for example, you have, if incident is triggered in your system, you have some sort of the time based on the severity. If the severity is high, you take action immediately. If it's severity, 1, 2, 3. So if it's low, you can take a week or so. So also in the case of the threat hunting, but they have not specifically mentioned that how long it will take for them to actually hunt. Yeah. Yes.
Question, are there any specific tools used only by threat hunters or they are just similar tools like for SOC analysts, but the mindset is different?
So in order to tools, for example, in the use case hunting, okay, so they are building the hypothetical scenarios. So they can use the open source framework, for example, Maitri framework. So they are utilizing that platform to build the hypothetical cases. And then if that case is triggered, then they will start analysis. And even in the analysis, they sometimes for the log collection, also they have the firewalls, they have the EDRs, all the logs from that, all the defensive devices they use. The remediation, of course, they will block whatever the tools and technology they have. That is based on which organizations they are working on.